The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming as never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artists at the heart of this. They have a unique power to inspire, astonish, provoke and shock. To push boundaries, ask new questions and see the world afresh. Artists like Grayson Perry.
I like Grayson Perry. He's a bit of a naughty boy, but I like him.
He's a cross-dressing Potter from Essex, isn't he? That's how he describes himself.
He, quite uniquely among contemporary artists, has had something very witty and funny and very prescient to say about contemporary art.
What I really love about Grayson Perry is the way that he sort of crosses over and transcends so many different things.
I'm a quality control freak. I have to do it badly in the right way. Because your mistakes is your style.
Contemporary artist, broadcaster, author, transvestite, lecturer and, as his Twitter biography states, a worshipper of teddy bears. Grayson Perry is probably best known for his classically shaped vases, traditionally beautiful until you take a closer look. In 2003, he won the Turner Prize, Britain's most prestigious award for contemporary art, but he's now setting his sights on a global stage. With work ranging from tapestry to graphic novels and addressing universal themes around identity and the modern world, he's one of Britain's most compelling and best-loved artists.
I was born in 1960 in Chelmsford, about 30 miles from London. My father was an electrician, but he left when I was 4. My mother was quite... she's still alive. My mother is quite what you call a drama queen. I have a list of banned words that includes passionate, spiritual and profound. All words it would be easy to reach for when describing the thing that keeps me making art. But the motivation is tender and it needs to be protected from cliches. I have a particular acute allergy to cliches because my mother ran off with the milkman. I suppose what I did, I sort of retreated into an imaginary world because it wasn't the happiest environment to grow up in, and my teddy bear, which I got when I was 1, became kind of a sort of symbolic father for me. All my games when I was a child centred around his leadership. Alan Measles, that's my teddy bear's name. He led the sort of rebellion against the invading Germans. And it was this sort of ongoing game that sort of churned on until I was about, 15. He was called Alan Measles because my best friend, when I was very little, was my next door neighbour's son, and he was called Alan. And measles because we bonded when I had measles. Very simple. And often people sort of say, about, say like I'm a transvestite, and they say, isn't dressing up in women's clothes a very sort of simplistic way of accessing your femininity? And I always say, yeah, but I became a transvestite when I was a child, when I was quite simple. In the same way as, isn't there a more sophisticated way of kind of supplementing your lack of a male role model and giving it to your teddy bear? I was a child. You use the material that's available at the time. Playing. I was top of the class at school until all of my demons came home to roost when I was about 14. My academic career collapsed. I think it was just all of my demons, that were to do with my father leaving and my stepfather being a sort of violent, difficult person. I'd always liked art, and then my art teacher just said, I think you'll do really well at art college one day. And I thought, Oh, I never thought of that. I went to Portsmouth Polytechnic, which wasn't a particularly prestigious art school, but it was okay. It was very free and easy in that sort of 60s mould of, try a bit of everything. We don't really mind what you do. You can do printing, you can do sculpture, you can do ceramics, you can do painting, filmmaking. I did it all when I was there. And then when I left art college, I did what every aspiring art student did. I came to London, and at the time, it's almost, I can't imagine a student now doing it. I came to central London and squatted for 4 years, so I lived rent-free in central London with a bunch of 1980s bohemians for 4 years. That was amazingly fertile grounding for me as an artist.
He hung out with a group of artists called the Neo-Naturists, who were a kind of really interesting group of mostly women, kind of performance artists, but they did these very grotty, slightly shabby, not very professional performances where they would get naked, they would often paint themselves. Grayson was involved in some of those performances. There's a wonderful early photo of him with his body paint all over him and a little bell hanging off his member. And he obviously got into the spirit of real kind of fun silliness and almost like anti the slick art that they were seeing coming out of places like New York in the 1980s.
Everybody in the squat had a good sense of humour, and quite a ruthless mockery of any pretension. And so we used to laugh about people's aspiring trendiness or something, even though, of course, we were kind of being fashionable ourselves. That's the irony of it. And that kind of filled me. And so I was always attracted to the slightly naff thing, really unfashionable and a bit awful. And so I was always attracted to that. And that's why when one of my friends in the house said, would you fancy doing pottery evening classes, because she was going along, I said, yeah, that sounds interesting. It seemed foolish to go down that route. Pottery? Pottery?
Ideas.
Award-winning contemporary artist Grayson Perry has been described as one of the great social and cultural commentators of our era. But his discovery of his signature medium, ceramics, happened almost by accident.
In retrospect, it could look like that was a major moment, in my life. Like, oh God, yes, suddenly the minute I touched clay, I knew that I had a spiritual connection with the earth, But no, it wasn't. It was like I had a facility with it. I enjoyed it, but I was incredibly inept. I had zero craft skills at the time.
The very earliest piece that Grayson Perry made was a plate called Kinky Sex, where there's an image of Christ being crucified on the cross, drawn in this very loose, slightly messy style, which wasn't on purpose. It was because he wasn't very skilled at that time at ceramics. And over his groin, there's a melted coin, which has kind of gone a bit wrong in the firing of the ceramic piece. And across the bottom of the plate are written the words Kinky Sex. So that collision of religion, fantasy, sex, pottery, domesticity were kind of all there from the very earliest work.
Here's my trusty kilns. This is my little kiln and my big kiln, because you don't want to fire up a big kiln all the time. And here's one of my trusty kiln gods. This is my Alan Measles kiln god. This is him as a kind of dogu, which is an early Japanese ceramic. And I use him as a kiln god to protect my work from what I call the gifts of the fire. Because often potters, when they see a lovely dribble or a crack, they go, oh, that's so lovely, that's the gift of the fire. And I kind of go, gifts, they're a bit like what your auntie gives you at Christmas. You don't really want them. I didn't know it, but it was going to be sort of my defining medium, or at least it set me on a path of the way that I work with tradition. It meant immediately that I was having a dialogue with all these different times and cultures. And that is what I do to this day. Whatever medium I pick up on, I'm always looking backwards and forwards. I just go around museums and I go, yeah, like that, I'll do one of them. And that's how I operate. And I've never worried about being original, because I don't know. Originality, is, as they say, is for people with short memories. I operate on what I call the Chinese whispers track. You know, I copy something and get it a bit wrong, so it becomes something new. The words contemporary ceramics always fill me a little bit with dread, because there's a sort of knowingness about them, whereas I like something that seems to sort of be unself-consciously decorative and joyful. I think it sits uncomfortably in the art gallery because it was already an art form, and yet it was an art form that was linked to craft and tradition. And I was sort of hovering in and out of the art world because of that. I could feel the tension. Right up to the point I won the Turner Prize, practically, there was tension around what are these vases doing in an art gallery.
On the night of the award, he turned up with his wife and his daughter, wearing this incredible pale purple, ridiculously kitsch baby doll dress and these little red pump shoes. I remember him saying, in his very cheeky way, it's about time a transvestite potter won the Turner Prize. It suddenly meant that he was on the international stage and was a force to be reckoned with. And after that, many invitations for exhibitions came, many commissions for work. There was suddenly a much greater interest in his work on the art market.
I've had a sort of love-hate relationship, I think, with the market. I mean, I've never had any problem selling my work. And one of the reasons was it was incredibly cheap. And ceramics had a kind of understandable, you know, it's like, would someone spend 35 quid on a plate or a very, very cheap piece of conceptual art? And I always thought they're probably more likely to buy the plate. And so there was something satisfying about that. So I never had any problem selling the work. I just didn't sell it for very much money. But at the same time, I didn't try to second guess what people wanted. I just made what I wanted to make, what I enjoyed making, and hoped that they would come along. And so every time I've tried a new media or a new category of object, we didn't know. I mean, the first print I did, God, did we underprice it. You know, I mean, the first print we did, the Map of an Englishman, I think it was up for sale for £3,500. It sold out in 2 days, and now they sell for £40,000, you know. We underpriced that. I suppose all my big themes are kind of quite social. Class and taste. I mean, again, it's about if I see the overarching themes as being about what's happening unconsciously, what is affecting our behaviour without us always realising it. You know, it talks about our education, the way we talk, what we eat, what we wear, what we do as a job. You know, it has all these huge repercussions. And so I'm interested in that. And then politics, you know, I'm always, whatever's going on in the world around, you know, the problems in the Middle East or whatever, or the banking crisis. Early on, my work was a lot about me, you know, like many young artists. I was doing lots of work that was quite autobiographical. I probably do that less now. So this is as near as you're going to get from me, really, that it's a self-portrait. There's this idea that in the middle of us there is this sort of pearl that is our identity and everything else kind of sticks to it. Whereas I think, actually, we are just a kind of bunch of experiences. We develop in communion, in relationship to other people. That's how we become who we are. Identity is something that we don't do on our own. It's co-created. I make work about the world more now and about, you know, the issues and people that I'm interested in. I follow where I'm enthusiastic. My detector says go this way, and I go that way. I don't have an agenda. I'm looking to see what excites me. I notice stuff. As some little kid once said, what do artists do? They notice stuff.
He's a potter, he's a sculptor, he works in an unfashionable material, as he puts it. He uses these objects as vessels, literally and metaphorically, to carry meaning. He's a conceptual artist of sort, but he's a performance artist too. I think it's too reductive to say the alter ego Claire, the cross-dressing, is part of a performance artistic practice that was carefully planned. It's part of who he is. But that projection, that persona, is inextricably linked.
Gender, you know, what it is to be a man or a woman, that's always interested me greatly, being a tranny. I was pretty kinky even as a very small child. I enjoyed tying myself up from about the age of 7. I remember in the school play I was playing Angel Gabriel, and the dress was a big, it had a definite throb going on, thinking about it. And I was sort of like, that was the sort of early sort of sexual feelings. And then I had a fantasy, and I thought, oh, you know, I was having a fantasy and some cross-dressing was involved, and I really got, wow, that's exciting. And then one day I was reading the Sunday paper, like one of the tabloids, and it had an article about transvestites in it, and I was like, OMG, there are others out there. And then I knew I was a transvestite, and that was interesting. And I just gradually, I kept it a secret. I knew enough about it that it wasn't something you bragged about in the playground. And I didn't really come out until I was at art college. But then it was almost an asset.
I think he is a living sculpture of sorts. He is an ongoing performance. And I think he's also very symptomatic of the world in which we live in, where boundaries are blurred. I don't think there's any significant difference between him as a critic or commentator or television filmmaker or intervener or producer of artistic objects. I think it's all part of one creative personality.
I think the central identifier about my artwork might be that it's familiar, and yet it's talking about fresh things. So it's like, you know, everybody knows what a pot is, what a tapestry, what a print is. Everything I do is an archetype. And yet I'm talking about the contemporary world, and I'm trying to make it fresh, and I'm trying to make it visually arresting and seductive.
He seems to be able to reach people in different ways, and I think part of that reason is because he's a modern artist who doesn't take himself very seriously, even though the ideas he talks about and engages with are very profound.
I'm not scared of being seductive, and I like lots of detail and texture, you know, all the traditional things that I'm not scared of doing that. You know, I won't deny me them like some more ascetic, ideas-based artist. I will wallow in it. They're rather beautiful close up. I do like the tapestry because most sort of digital products have a sort of deadness about them, but this has got a liveliness, almost like a handmade object, in that it doesn't behave. I like that. Well, I'm interested in making a sophisticated art for a popular audience. That's what I'm interested in. The first, what I would call celebrity artefact that I made was the Walthamstow tapestry, which is my big 15-metre tapestry. And that was the first artwork. Even though I've been making pottery at that point for 25 years or something, it was the first artefact where people could say, name an artwork by Grayson Perry, and people go, oh, that Walthamstow tapestry. I was cycling along one day, and somebody came past in the car, and they said, love your tapestry! And I thought, yes, I've got an artefact. That's my Damien Hirst Shark sort of moment. I thought, that's good. Ideas.
With work ranging from tapestry to graphic novels and addressing universal themes around identity in the modern world, Grayson Perry is one of Britain's most compelling and best-loved artists. A household name in his native country, he's now setting his sights on the international stage, with the US publication of his best-selling book on contemporary art and shows in Australia and Turkey in 2015.
I've done so many big projects recently that I quite like the idea of going back to being an artist that makes individual works, you know, because they fancy making them without any kind of overarching big plan. But then a big plan will come along, and I kind of end up making stuff about that. I haven't quite had that orthodox international contemporary art career, and I'm kind of thinking, yeah, I'll have a go at that for a while, you know, and have shows abroad and be an artist.
I think the other thing I really like about Grayson Perry is that there's a really specifically English thing about him. He just seems like someone that we should feel proud of, because only Britain could have created someone like him.
I do like the idea of being a kind of ambassador for a certain sort of Britishness. I think, you know, I'm a pretty British artist. I like the idea of going, oh, yes, that's modern Britain. Oh, very interesting. Oh. But it's got that, you know, it's got tradition, it's got humour. Humour is very important to me. It's, you know, it's engaged socially. So, yeah, I think, and I think my work, you know, by trying not to be original, I think I've got a distinctive voice.
I hope that his internationalisation doesn't turn him into an English eccentric. And I don't mean that he would become that, he's far too smart. But I hope he's not pigeonholed as that, because actually he's so much more important.
I'm probably quite unusual as an artist these days in that I work on my own. I don't have a studio assistant, apart from when I can't pick up one of my pots and I have to get my friend to help me lift it. In terms of all the drawing, the sculpting, the making the ceramics, I do it myself. When I make a bronze, I sculpt the thing myself. When I make the tapestries, I draw every bloody square centimetre of it myself. And so I'm a man-hour sort of artist. And I realise that actually, you know, that's nice and people can approve of me for that. But it's also a bit of a handicap in the modern art world because, you know, I can only make so much art. And the demands of the vast acreages of flashy art space there is to fill nowadays means that it's voracious and I can't keep up with it. So I think I deny myself opportunities that I could have. But I'm a quality control freak. I have to do it badly in the right way. You know, I need to be able to make mistakes. I can't trust anybody else to make the right sort of mistakes. Because your mistakes is your style. You know, otherwise we'd all be doing photorealism. As an artist who exhibits in the public sphere, I still think that my job is to make material culture that people will come and see, that will operate on a level where my unconscious talks to their unconscious. And that's what visual art does brilliantly. You know, it's under the radar. So they're looking at stuff, and while they're looking at it, something's happening. They might not even know what it is. My audience is, you know, are people that are interested in culture, but they might not be in the art ghetto. They are generally interested in culture. You know, I love it when people say, oh, I took my 14-year-old son to your show and I'd never taken him to an exhibition before because he always complained that his interest was piqued and he came away, you know, convinced that art was a good thing from your show. And I think, yeah, good. Tick. Probably when people encounter me, even to this day, they're thinking, what are these vases doing in an art gallery? And of course, for me, that is like a golden opportunity because it's like, you mean you'll accept a urinal that he didn't even make himself? And yet I've been probably not that far away. It's been a gold mine for me. A gift.